Time has come for repair. We're going to fly them, we're going to tear them up, I guess. So I'm going to be bringing in the 310 because I have a wing ordered for it. I stalled the airplane, landed on the gear, but stalled it, and hit hard enough to fracture the wing, but not hard enough to damage the landing gear. So I'm going to be bringing the airplane in, taking it apart, and I'm going to let you look over my shoulder and make sure I do everything right. So. And we're also going to take a look at that wing and see just how much damage was actually done. But at any rate, I'm not going to repair the wing. I'm going to put a new one on. So with that, let's get the airplane in and have a look. Okay, first we have a broken prop, but it doesn't look like the motor is damaged, but you can see that I am able to move this wing. So, when I move around, you can see here, this is actually way up, it should be below. It should look something like this, okay? So we definitely twisted this up. So I'm going to guess that the landing gear was just really strong. But other than that, no other damage. No damage to the wingtip. No damage on the outside of the nacelle. So all the damage is right here. And I'm going to guess that that's probably just a freak thing. But again, no damage. The struts look to be straight. The nose gear, it looks to be straight. It's not tweaked or bent. So again, I think it might be just a fluke thing with this wing, but at any rate, I'm going to take it apart now and we'll find out. Okay, we've removed the screws. So now I'm going to raise this fuselage. So it looks like everything is contained basically in the wing. There's no damage front or rear. So that's good. Okay, we just lay a towel on the wing to rest the fuselage, and then we're going to unhook all the wires. Here you can see I've disconnected all the lines going from the fuselage to the wing, and now I'm ready to separate the two. I did take a good look at the fuselage to make sure there's no stress cracks or issues with any kind of fractures. All of the issue is over with the wing. So now I'm going to take out the center bolt here. This is the joining bolt. And we will separate these two wing halves and investigate a little more. Also, whenever I work on an airplane, I have a little tray. This happens to be big enough for what I'm doing here. Sometimes I'll have a bigger tray or a box, and I keep all the parts in. That way they're pretty easy to keep up with that way. So now let me go ahead and separate the wing. but the gear appears to be okay. No, I mean it works. You see it just fell down there, and it's locked. So I think what we're going to do is take the gear out, pull the nacelle, remove the wingtip, and mount this on a new wing. So let's move over to the other one. Okay, I've just removed the nacelle and gone over it, and there's absolutely no damage, no fatigue, no cracks. So the nacelle is fine. So we will set that aside. Now, just to give you an idea how efficient my setup is, you can see that I have the temp dots on my ESC, and the lowest temp dot is it looks like 140. Yeah, it starts at 140 and goes up around to 180. So my speed controller never got to 140 because the dot is not on or highlighted or darkened. And then also, if we look here, and I wanted to be really clear on my motor, so I put two temp dots on, and this one here again is the 140, starts at 140, and you can see it's not activated, none of the dots are. But then I had bought some lower temp temperature measuring devices, and this one here has been activated, and it's been activated up to looks like maybe 130, just at 130. So the motor temperature has never gotten above 130 degrees. And I am running a 13.8 two-bladed prop. So that's a pretty good setup, and I'm also running on 6 cells with this setup. So here you can see what I'm going to have to do, and actually I am not going to get really serious with this, because what I'm going to do is do the same thing to the other nacelle that I did to this one as far as the setup here, and I'm basically going to be removing this from the wing so that I can transfer it over to the new wing. Here I've turned the wing over so you can see the inside, and again I'm going to be removing the nacelle from the wing and transferring it to the new wing. And I don't anticipate any issues, but I guess we're going to find out. Okay, I've removed the horn from the servo, just took the screw out and popped the horn off the servo, and just removed the last screw, and you can see I have another one of my little plastic bins. So all the retract parts will be going in this little bin. You can see that retract just lifts right out, and again we're just going to inspect the gear, make sure there's no signs of fatigue or anything bent. And no, the gear is in good shape. I mean, it's working. It looks like it's working fine. Yeah, it's free. It's not bound up, so I'd say there's no damage to the gear. So now we can set that aside. I do have 2 shims in here, and we'll transfer these over to the new wing. And that was probably to raise the gear up so that it did not bottom out on the wing, because you also notice here that I had to cut out the pan, the wheel well pan, in order for that wheel not to rub in there. And also I beveled the wheel slightly in order for it not to hit. But at any rate, that should bolt right into the next wing. All right, now we'll go ahead and remove the servo, the aileron servo. Okay, I've removed the horn as well as the servo from the wing, and also put an R on it because this is the right wing, so I'll make sure that that gets back on the proper wing. Okay, I've worked my way to the point where I need to undo my connectors here so that I can pull all of the lines through the wing. And this is a great little tip for a lot of guys because they don't use this. Normally, some people probably don't even know what this is, but this is a seam ripper, and it works great for removing shrink wrap, just like you see me doing here. Now, you don't want to force it, but the idea is you run it through, and you see how quick and easy it was to remove this shrink wrap. Okay, now that I've taken the connectors loose and I have the wires independent of one another, I can pull them through. And I like to pull them one at a time, that way I don't wind up with a conglomerate trying to pass through a hole that it can't go through. So here, this is my lighting wire, the wingtip lights, and I know that because it's only 2 wires. And then this one is going to be the aileron, and so I pull it through, and now I can go ahead and chase it the rest of the way through and pull it off. And because sometimes you have areas that are tight, or you have a connector, you have to work the wire back and forth, and you eventually wind up with it coming through. I'm pulling the power wire for the lights. And again, it's probably trying to pass through a hole in a rib. But if you wiggle it, don't ever pull on it really hard. Because you never want to strain your connectors. But you can see, if you wiggle it enough, it will eventually come through. And there we go. Okay, so now I've got it to here. Now the wire goes from here to there. The aileron servo is done. That brings us to the light, and we need to feed that wire through, but more importantly, this wingtip is going to be going on the new wing, and it needs to be removed. And so another tip for you, this wingtip was installed with epoxy, so what I'm going to do is rough cut the wing off of, or the wingtip off of the wing. So here's how I go about removing the wingtip from the wing. Now I know I have a wire in here, so I have to be careful of that wire. So I'm pretty sure that wire is not run back here. I'm almost positive my wire is up front here. And so because it's up front, I'm going to be working the back to get it cut through. As I get close up here where I think my wire is, I'm just going to be barely into the balsa wood. But the idea is that I'm just going to be cutting this off of the rib itself. The spar is right here, so that's why it was a little tricky to get into there. The other thing is I'm not going to damage my aileron because I may wind up using this aileron. I'm not sure if the wing is going to include the aileron, so if it doesn't, it's not a problem because I will have an aileron. Okay, now I've scored around the wingtip, so I'm guessing that the only thing holding it now is going to be the spar. And again, I'm curious as to where this wire is, so now I'm going to investigate. And here my wire is. So now that I know where the wire is, I'll go ahead and pull it through. And then I can remove the wing tip from the wing. Okay. Now I have the wingtip removed from the wing and no damage to my wire. So now what I'm going to do is push my wire, I'm going to coil it up and put it inside the wing or inside the wingtip. That way I don't get it caught on anything. Now let's go ahead and see about removing part of this. A little bit at a time. You can see I actually did a pretty good job, and I just went over it with a piece of sandpaper, removed anything that was loose, and now this is ready to glue or epoxy onto the new wing. Yeah, I've removed all the parts from the wing, and now I want to save the motor box, the inner part of the nacelle, mainly because this is not included with the kit. So what I need to do is save it. And I'm going to cut it out of this side of the wing. So the first thing I'm going to do is just make a big hole around it, and then I'll clean it up. Now I've removed this part from the wing, and again, this is the area that I want to keep. So what I have to do now is cut away all of the wing, and then the plan would be to take this and bolt it right onto the new wing. And actually, I say bolt, but literally it'll be glued on, because originally it was designed to be bolted on, but of course I glued it on, so that's why it's going to be a little more difficult to get off. But the idea is that if I have this piece and I remove this rib and this rib, then I'll be able to slide this on to the new wing. Before I discard this wing, I thought I might share with you my findings with a little bit more investigation on the wing. Actually, what failed with the wing was the rear spar, which is a piece of material that goes from here all the way through, and the flaps actually back up against it. And it is only a 1/4 inch balsa wood. So you don't have a lot of spar material there to begin with. But what I was really surprised to find was that the spar itself, the main spar, is nothing more than 1/8 inch balsa. So, but it does have a, looks like a maybe 3/8 of an inch by 3/16 of an inch hardwood on top and the bottom. And the leading edge is actually quite durable. As you can tell whenever I was cutting through. Now see here, you can see the leading edge, and then the two pieces of hardwood on either side of the balsa wood. So for all intents and purposes, the wing actually held up pretty good. It's just the rear spar failed, and that of course allowed the wing to twist. So that's my finding, and I'm pretty confident that that's actually what happened. So I guess in theory the main gear is actually stronger than the rear spar. I will be using heat to remove these blocks of wood, because I want to use these blocks of wood for the simple fact that if I don't use them, that means I got to cut more, and I just soon use what I have here. The idea is heat will actually destroy the bond that epoxy has. So literally, if you put this in an oven at about 200 degrees for about 10 to 12, maybe 15 minutes, you will actually be able to pull these apart as if they were just stuck together with masking tape or some form of tape, because again, that's what weakens the epoxy bond. And I'll show you what I mean whenever I start to do that. But right now I'm just going to go ahead and clear these parts from this, and again, I'm going to be using this, so I'm going to be careful not to cut into or destroy this piece of material here. Okay, these I'll be putting in the toaster oven so that I can remove the pieces of hardwood. And again, it's glued with epoxy, so it's pretty durable right now. But as soon as it gets some heat, these pieces will literally fall apart. This being the flap servo mount, I wanted to leave this intact because what I'll do is I'll clean this up and glue this right back to the top of the wing just like it was before I took it off. So this part here will stay with the box. So now the only thing I have left to do is to clear this part here and to clear this rib and this rib here, and then this box would be ready to mount back in the new wing. Okay, here I've taken the wood parts and put them in the toaster oven, and they've been in there about 15 minutes at about 200 degrees, and you can see that they're literally just falling apart, and that was epoxy. So if you got something that you glued together and you don't want it glued together anymore, just put it in a toaster oven or the oven, and obviously you don't want to leave it in there and walk away, but you can see that the epoxy, I mean, it literally just becomes really brittle. So now I'm just going to clean these parts up and remove the existing epoxy or remnants thereof. But so another little tip: if you've got something you glued together and you want to take it apart, heat it up. Again, about 200 degrees for about 15 minutes, and it will literally fall apart. So now I could have cut new parts or spend just a little bit of time, and now I've cleaned these up. You can see there the wood just falling off of it. There's a piece right here. You can see it just, I mean, the epoxy's just like, almost like bubble gum. Or it's really brittle. Now, I'd say that's ready to use. So now I have my parts, and they've been cleaned. And this, of course, is the remnants of what's left, and that can go in the trash, because these are the parts that I want. Those four. Okay, here's a close look at those hardwood parts, and I ran them across the belt sander, and you can see they all cleaned up really good. So if you got something that's glued with epoxy and you want to take it apart and it's hardwood, use heat. Works really well. Okay, I've started the process of cleaning up the box, the motor box and battery box. And you can see on this side, this is how I started out, and cleaned the back side as well as the other side here. And this is actually slide right in the wing, the new wing. So what I have to do now is remove this part here. And I've only used 2 tools to do that with. You wouldn't want to use heat because you would actually be taking the box totally apart, and I don't want to do that. All I want to do is remove this portion of the rib. And I've done it using the Dremel and this vibrating tool. This is a tool you can pick up at Harbor Freight for like, I don't know, 40 bucks. But it's nothing more than a vibrating cutter, and it works really, really well. And this, I'm just using a rasp on the Dremel. And make sure that you always wear safety goggles, or at least glasses, because parts do fly. But at any rate, you can see this actually, with only using these 2 tools, this is actually cleaned up very well. So I'll go ahead and finish cleaning up this area here, and then this one will be ready to mount. See how easy that came off? I mean, this tool is just amazing. Here's a look at the finished motor battery box after it was cleaned up. Again, I removed the rib here, rib on this side, and the spar material that was on the back. And this actually cleaned up pretty good. Again, I used a vibrating tool and the Dremel. More so, almost all of it was done with a vibrating tool. But at any rate, you can see that it actually cleaned up really well. This is the other half of the wing that was damaged, and I'm not going to use it. I'm going to put both halves of the new wing on. So what I have to do is remove everything from this half like I did the other half, and I figure in the other videos you've seen parts of each step. So in this video I'm going to do the steps and just let the camera run. And I believe the position that you're at, you'll be able to see everything. So I will not be editing this video or stopping it or pausing it or anything like that. So the plan is to go through with this from start to finish. So that's the plan. We'll see how it goes. Then we're looking at the motors again, and the temperature is the same as it was on the other one. About 130 degrees is the highest temperature that the motor has achieved. Again, the seam ripper, a tool that I would not be without in my workshop. Here's another reason why. See what I mean? Just really quick. You just can't believe how something that little can be such a time saver. Now notice I tied this in a knot, and I also tied this one in a knot. Is because I know the yellow is for the light, but I tied it in a knot so that I know that it needed a connector or an extension. And so that's why that was tied in a knot like that. now we're ready to start pulling wires. So first I'm going to remove the gear, 3-track, and the 2 plates that came with it, which are here. And you can pull the motor off. And its hardware. And then the speed controller. And now we can start pulling out wires. And again, I pull them one at a time, because in that way I don't have a bunch of wires trying to come through a given hole. So, here's the flat servo. Here's the light wire. I'll go ahead and get it out of the way. Okay. This is the aileron servo. So those 2 are out. This is the flap servo. And then speed controller. Okay. Pull the speed controller on through. And now the flap servo. And then what we have left is the aileron servo. Now we're going to chase the aileron servo through, or the servo lead. Okay. And last we have the light lead. Now, another of my tools, I have this little apparatus here that I use when I want to chase a wire down. So I always have these little tools laying around the shop. I know what they're for, but nobody else might not. And most of the time it makes quick work of some little task such as that. Now, the only thing I have left to do is remove this box and remove the wingtip. I just want to make sure you guys were getting all the video. Alright, so now I'm going to use my power tool, so it's going to get a little loud, but I'm going to remove the wingtip. There's nothing wrong with the wingtip, and besides, a set of those is like 80 bucks, and I don't need to buy another set. If I can utilize these, and I will. probably thinking, why did he cut this wing up? Well, I really don't want to use the wing because it's been in a crash, and for all intents and purposes it was a crash. And so it's probably got some fatigue that may not be showing. Plus it's an ARF, so at any rate, now I know where the wire is, so I can go ahead and cut this all the way off. Okay, so now here's the wing tip, and I guess at this point I might as well go ahead and remove this, clean this up. So what I'm going to do is fold this wire so that I don't grab it on anything, and I'm going to stuff it inside here. We're going to make sure that it goes away from the hole. Now we're almost down to the fiberglass on this, but you get an idea, you get a really good idea of how beneficial a tool like this can be. So I won't take too much more time on this to clean this up and get it ready to go. So now I'll set that aside and clean it up a little bit. And now the last thing I need to do is cut away the motor battery box. Now remember, on the other box I saved this piece, so what I need to do now is cut it from the top of the wing. Much like that. Now remember, the hardwood pieces, I used the toaster oven to take those apart. And you can see, I mean, they are really glued together really well. So what I'm going to do is break them out of the wing, and then I'll put them in the toaster oven so that I can take them apart and glue them back together. What I'm removing here now is the wheel well, which I won't use it, but I want to get it out of my way so I can see what's going on in there. It's just a fiberglass piece that I don't need. Again, it's interesting. This thing had a balsa wood spar. I couldn't believe that, but hey, I guess if it works. Matter of fact, here's the magnets that held the battery lid together, or closed. Now, let's see. Okay, now I have that off of there. I tell you, I don't know what I would do without this tool right here. It is just, it's amazing how quick and how easy some jobs can be. So now this is done. There's nothing else in here that I need. Well, there is one other thing that I need, and maybe it's on here. Nope. There's actually one more magnet. I needed the other magnets for the lid. So now this is basically a nice piece of trash, because there's nothing really worth salvaging. I could take the aileron off because it's not damaged, but I think the new wing will have it, so I'll just leave it on there. But at any rate, that's how we go about removing the pieces. Now we can go ahead and start cleaning this up a little bit, and what I want to do is take these hardwood pieces off, because again, I'm going to remove those using the toaster oven. So to start with, now you'll get to see how well this actually cleaned up. And again, I'm going to remove all the balsa wood that I can, because balsa wood has a tendency to burn at a lower temperature. So those pieces will go in the toaster oven, and whenever I'm done, they will actually come out looking like that. And we'll clean up. And this piece right here, remember, I want to keep this on there. I don't want to mess with that glue joint, but I do need to get the wing sheeting off of it. So I'm going to be cleaning that. Here you can see the epoxy just literally disintegrating, and it's not because I'm cutting into it, it's because of the heat that's generated from this blade. That's basically what happens to it in the oven. It just disintegrates, so it loses its strength and its bond. So you do the same thing, just I can do the same thing with the side of that blade as I can with the front, because again, it's not the blade that's doing it, it's the friction that's actually melting. Another little tip for you, if you're putting on control surfaces or like the rudder empennage where you epoxy them on and you get a little bit of epoxy on your covering, don't worry about it, let it set up, and then take your monocoat iron and go take your sock off the monocoat iron and move the monocoat iron at a medium heat right on the epoxy, and the epoxy will literally start rolling up in the corner, and then you can peel it off and it makes for a nice finish. Again, this tool just makes really quick work of it. There was some CA, because this was actually glued in using thick CA. So I've had some CA here, that's what I was removing off of there. But at this rate now, I'm going to go ahead and remove the rib. See how easy that came off? I mean, this tool is just amazing. Here's the look at the wing that I just dismantled. And I have to apologize for the video running out. My camera only shoots for 30 minutes and then it shuts off. So, or it stops recording, it doesn't shut off, otherwise I would have noticed that. But at any rate, I did finish up cleaning up the other motor battery box. So both of those were done. The wingtips, I also cleaned those up. And then the only thing I have left to do now is stick these pieces here under the heat in a toaster oven, 200 degrees for about 15 minutes. And then they will come apart, and then a few passes on the belt sander and they will look much like these pieces here. So at any rate, if you've got a project coming up, or you got something that you've put in or crashed or had a mishap with, it's not the end of the world. These parts here are not even available from Top Flite, so it was really good that I was able to recover those. And then these pieces here, they're available, but they're like $89, I think, plus the shipping. So I did save myself a little bit of money with that. But at any rate, hopefully there was a few tools here, one of them being the vibrating tool and the other one being the seam ripper, that if you don't have those in your workshop, and you do a lot of building, these are two tools that you might want to consider getting a hold of, because they did save me a lot of time. I know the vibrating tool did for sure. But at any rate, if you have any questions about the technique or what I've done here, just send me an email and I'll be glad to answer you in the best way I can. Thanks for your time and enjoy the hobby.